In this movie, I'm going to look at paragraph indents. I'm referring to left indents, right indents, first line indents, and last line indents. The humble first line indent serves a very important function. It indicates to the reader where a new paragraph begins. So important is the first line indent that Jan Tschichold, famous typographer of the 20th century, said, "Typesetting without indentation makes it difficult for the reader to comprehend what has been printed, and that is its most important disadvantage. While blunt beginnings, i.e. not indented, seem to create a uniform and consistent impression when compared to normal typesetting, this impression is paid for with a serious loss of comprehension." So we want to use first line indents, but we don't need to use a first line indent for the first paragraph or a paragraph which follows a subhead or a head, because the purpose of the first line indent is to indicate a difference. But if there is no preceding paragraph, or if the paragraph preceding is already different, the first line indent is unnecessary. So that's one point. Another point is they don't need to be that big. In this case, they are 1 M space, and that's fairly typical. An M space is the size of your type. So here I have 14 point type, and 14 point is the size of the first line indent. See over here, the text on the right, they're too big. And when they're too big, this kind of thing can happen. The first line indent is bigger than the length of the line that precedes it, and you get some ugly gaps between those paragraphs. So as I mentioned, we don't need the first line indent when the paragraph is preceded by a different style of paragraph. Now, indents are one way to differentiate paragraphs. The other way, or the other main way, is to use paragraph spacing. First line indents tend to be used more in prose. Paragraph spacing tends to be used more for instructional text. Of course, there are all sorts of exceptions to that rule, but that's a good way to approach it. Compared to paragraph spacing, first line indents are more economical. On the left, we fit 410 words, but the same text with paragraph spacing, we only fit 383 words. Now, sometimes we want to indent not just on the left, but also on the right. Typical case in point is when you are excerpting a paragraph where you have a block quote, as I have here. And the way to approach this usually is to indent on the left and right, equal amount. In this case, I am making it 1 M space. The size of the type is 20 points. So I'm indenting that much on the left and the right, the same as the amount of first line indent that is applied to the paragraph which follows. And for this quoted text, I'm actually making it just a little bit smaller, typically 1 point smaller. Now I'm using larger point sizes here for display purposes, but if this were reading text, these type sizes will be about half of what they currently are. Related to indents, we have hanging indents. If you are quoting a passage as a pull quote, as some sort of display, then we actually want the text to align beneath the first character rather than underneath the quote mark. And the way we can get this is to insert what's known as an indent to here character. I'll show you where it is on the menu, and then I'll tell you the keyboard shortcut. And you can see it's a long way to the menu. Indent to here, which is a good reason to use the keyboard shortcut instead, which is Command or Control /. So here are some scenarios when indenting is really useful. For example, in an index where we actually have a hanging indent, where the second and subsequent lines are indented beyond the first. And this is achieved by adding a left indent and then a first line indent that is negative that same value. So 24 left minus 24 for the first line indent. The same approach is taken here for a dictionary entry. You can use indents in a table of contents to create hierarchy. So here I have 4 levels of hierarchy. The first level is distinguished from the second level by using a different font and a different weight. But then for the third and fourth levels of hierarchy, these are just indented. They're the same size, but differentiated by indenting this one by 24 points and the next one by a further 12 points. A hanging indent can be used for play scripts, where we want the dialogue to be indented beyond the name of the person speaking. And this is the same approach, a left indent, the same value, but negative for the first line indent, and then to push the text over to that point, what we need is a tab character. Let me just press W to switch to normal view mode, where we see the hidden character of the tab. And if I were to remove that, just replace that with a space, this is how it would look. But when I press the tab key, that moves the text over to the left indent value. As well as first line indents, we also have last line indents. They're not used anything like as frequently, but they can be useful, for example, on a menu where you want to push the price of the dish slightly beyond the right-hand edge of the text. And the way this is achieved is by adding a right indent and then a last line indent, which is the same value but negative. So let me just reset both of these values to 0. Starts out looking like that. We'll add in the right indent. That's going to move everything in from the right by 48 points. And then the last line indent minus 48 points. That will push that last line out towards the right-hand edge of the text frame.